We can certainly begin right away. First of all, let me say that I'm delighted to be able to open this meeting in which we will have two important things happening. One is the signing of the MOU between our two academies, and the other is the lecture by Giorgio Parisi, which we are very much looking forward to, and also to listen to the discussants that who will be commenting on his lecture. It is indeed a great pleasure for me as Foreign Secretary of the Academy to be able to establish a more systematic relationship with the Accademia dei Lincei in Lisbon, and in particularly to be able to be working with an all-time friend, the President, José Luis Cardoso. And I'm sure that there will be many opportunities to exchange. We have been looking at the website of your academy and be very much impressed by the beauty of the building, by the sense of historical heritage that certainly it has. And also we have been impressed by the number of activities that you have done in the past and that you will be able to do in the future. So it is really a great pleasure that we start by signing our agreement. And so without any further ado, I will give the floor to our president, Professor Antonelli, who will say a few words, and then we will have the ceremony of signing the agreement. We don't see you, José Luis. We have somebody else on the screen. I don't know whether this is...
Yes, are you listening to me? No.
Yeah, now we see you. So that should be.
I suppose that maybe in the program I will speak first if Roberto Antonelli agrees, and then we'll.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I forgot that which were the order we have agreed upon. Okay.
Okay, and then the signature of the agreement will be after Professor Roberto Antonelli addresses also the members.
Okay. Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so. Thank you very much, Cristina. I'm here at the Lisbon Academy of Sciences together with Carlos Salema, the president of the class of sciences and vice president of the Lisbon Academy of Sciences. So we are here also to welcome you, all of you, and most of our colleagues and members of the academy, and both academies are, of course, following through video conference. So it's my great pleasure and honor to welcome all the members of both academies and also the audience of non-members who are following this joint session. My dear President Roberto Antonelli, an academy with the privilege of having Maria Cristina Marcuso as the Foreign Secretary knows that there is no risk of inactivity or laziness. We are most thankful to her initiative and enthusiasm to engage in fruitful academic international cooperation. Thank you very much, Cristina, for having made this possible. When we talk about the opportunity of and the relevance of signing a memorandum or a protocol of understanding, we immediately realize that we should take this occasion to show that what we want to do is not to merely congratulate each other and wait for things to fall from the sky. Therefore, we decided that it would be worth organizing a seminar or a roundtable devoted to the theme of to a theme of common interest. When we discussed a possible broad topic as the main theme for a roundtable, the bloody and insane war that concerns us so much today was not yet in the horizon. But we are sure that any discussion on the future of science in Europe and the role of learned societies must now take into account the changes that Russian invasion in Ukraine will impose to all of us in Europe and elsewhere around the world. I'm sure that the topic of the economic and political consequences of the war will be addressed by the colleagues and members of our academies who kindly accepted to share their views on science and science policies in Europe. Thank you so much, Professor Giorgio Parisi, for accepting to give the keynote address to this roundtable. It is indeed a great pleasure to benefit from your vision and wisdom. Thank you very much for accepting this task. Thank you also to Luis Oliveira Silva for accepting to share some comments. Luis is in Oxford, but he will be online also commenting on this topic. Unfortunately, we were expecting Elvira Fortunato to also to be a commenter, to give some comments today. But as some, at least the Portuguese colleagues know, Elvira Fortunato was nominated the Minister of Science and Technology and Higher Education of the new Portuguese government, and she will take duty of this, take office of this charge tomorrow, and she apologized for not being able to be with us today. We warmly welcome all of you to this event, and especially to the roundtable with a keynote address by Giorgio Paris. Jean-Pierre Bourguignon accepted to serve as moderator to this debate. Apart from his acknowledged talent and competence as a mathematician, Jean-Pierre Bourguignon is a major character with uncountable credits in the moderation, promotion, inspiration, dedication to science in Europe, to science-based policies, to policies for science development. Merci beaucoup, Jean-Pierre, for accepting this task today of moderating our roundtable. Thank you very much. Finally, on behalf of the Lisbon Academy of Sciences, I would like to thank the Italian scientists and humanists at large for their permanent, continuous presence in and support to the Lisbon Academy of Sciences. Perhaps this could be, my dear Cristina, the topic for a future seminar devoted to the Italian influences in Portuguese science and culture. For the moment, let me just briefly remind you that the creation of the Lisbon Academy of Sciences in 1779 was largely the outcome of a strong Italian inspiration. One of the main mentors and the first secretary of the Academy was José Correia da Serra, who lived 20 years of his youth in Naples, where he got his education and background formation as a scientist, keeping close contacts with major figures of the Neapolitan Enlightenment. The institutionalization of the Academy was also influenced by a group of Italian scientists who came to Portugal in the beginning of the 1760s to lecture in scientific subjects at the Royal College of the Nobles in Lisbon, and later on to contribute to the reform and development of new syllabus at the University of Coimbra, reformed by the Marquis of Pombal in 1772. Among them, a special reference is due to those who were nominated and founding members of the Lisbon Academy of Sciences, namely Michele Antonio Sierra, a specialist in astronomy and mathematics, Michele Franzini, also a mathematician, Giovanni Antonio Dalla Bella in physics and chemistry, and above all, Domenico Vandelli, a natural historian whose inspiration was paramount to establish the outstanding tradition of the Lisbon Academy in Economic Studies in late 18th century. By signing the protocol of collaboration with the Accademia Nazionale dei Lincei, the Lisbon Academy of Sciences is paying tribute to this long-lasting tradition of rewarding scientific and academic exchange. Let's keep and carry on this flame to the future. Thank you very much for being with us. And now, Professor and dear friend Roberto Antonelli, it's your turn before we sign the document.
Thank you. We are particularly pleased to sign the collaboration agreement between the Accademia dei Lincei and la Accademia delle Sciences de Lisbon, to which we are also linked by the presence of our members. Now, this is a very serious period in European history, when after so many years of peace, a war of aggression is being waged against a European country whose scientists and academy are linked to the Lincei by collaboration agreements. We share the values expressed by the Portuguese Academy on the situation in Ukraine, and we support the Russian scientist who with great courage have expressed their opposition to the political power of the Russian Federation. International scientific collaboration, in this case too, must prove to be stronger and more active than the policies of states. And the signing of our agreement is a further step in strengthening scientific research and friendship between people. It's no coincidence that today's webinar will address the relationship between the scientific community and political institutions, with particular regard to science-based consultancy as a support to legislative and governmental function. We hope that our collaboration can extend to all the disciplines represented in our academies with further joint initiatives, and that we can also work together to revitalize national economies affected by the effects of the pandemic. We will be holding two important conferences next month here in Accademia dei Lincei. One on the crisis in its various aspects, and second, the Amaldi Conference on nuclear risks and arms control, a topic that is unfortunately still very topical. We will send you the link and look forward to your presence, hoping to be able to attend your initiatives as well. Buon trabalho in un mondo de paz. Thank you.
So now I think we are ready, José Luis. Do you think we are ready to jointly sign the agreement? So please do.
Yes, yes, sure.
Okay, so you both sign.
Okay, done.
Done. So thank you very much. That's very good. So now I think we finished with this institutional part, but I just pick up your motto, nisi utiles quos facimus stulta est gloria. So this is the motto of the Accademia of Science. So I think now we go to the business of doing something which is useful, namely to listen to what we can learn from the topic of the lecture that Giorgio Parisi is giving. So before giving the floor to Professor Bourguignon, I would like to remind those who are listening in streaming that at the end of the conference, they can send their question in the chat, write the question, and then of course, Professor Bourguignon will take care to give the floor to Professor Parisi to answer these questions in the order that it will be decided by him. So my job is over, and I hand it to Professor Bourguignon to take charge of the following section of the activity.
Thank you very much, Professor Marcuccio, for giving me the opportunity to moderate this roundtable. And first of all, I feel very honored by your request, your joint request between the two academies. I still remember the visit I paid to Accademia dei Lincei when Giorgio was the president, and it was really a wonderful memory. And because your building and your history is so fantastic, I really enjoyed that. So as you know, we have now Giorgio to tell us something on the future of science in Europe. It's true that we are living through special times, which are not so great. But I think as scientists, we have to contribute positively to the situation. And in particular, I really believe that learned societies in general, but academies have a role to play. So it's my great honor and pleasure to give the floor to Giorgio, and in the name of our long time friendship, and also my thanks for his help when I was the director of IHS. We had very important discussions for me. Giorgio, please.
Thank you so much, Jean-Pierre. I am very happy to speak here in this occasion that is very important for us because we have to strengthen the ties between different academies. I like very much the screen that you have because you remember me of Olivet, where I spent a wonderful year in 76, 77. I think that it's the most beautiful library, setting library that I know. And let me start to speak about Europe. Europe, in some sense, I could say that it's a cultural creation. Because you see, the language that is spoken in Europe are so different, the people have a different origin, different ethnic behavior and so on. But this was something that was started a long time ago by humanists, by philosophers, by scientists that started a long time ago to create an European cultural space. And this European cultural space maybe goes a long way in time. For example, we can think of the first clerici vagantes, wandering clergy, that were traveling to Europe starting from the 6th or 17th century, 7th century. After we had the foundation of all the universities, Sorbonne, Bologna, and so on. And also this university where people going to university, the clerics that were going to university were coming for all Europe. There were situations where there was no boundary in the culture. After, therefore, Europe was being characterized, was characterized by long time ago by a class of highly cultivated people. They were in contact among themselves and move from one place to another one, transgressing national boundaries. So this is the fact that culture is going to transgress the boundary from one country to another country. It's been fundamental to create this cultural space, which started to do important for the construction of Europe. In order to coordinate the scientific research in the 16th, 17th century, there have been founded many of the academies that we have. For example, we have the Accademia Lincei, which have been the first national academy that was founded, and that was in 1603. After we had we have the Royal Society in 1646, we have the French Academy of Science that was founded in 1666, and Lisbon Academy of Science in 1779. And these academies were something that were united people, because typically in this academy, for example, in the French Academy, you have a national member, correspondent member, and foreign members. So the existence of this all these academies have a certain members that are foreign members, and which at the time were mostly European, and that was some kind of cement, some kind of union for European science. I remember the mathematician Euler that was going from visited different countries of Europe. I mean, there was all this type of connection, and therefore what I would say, the scientists, the learned society, the academies have been fundamental into the creation of Europe. For example, two of very important European, let's say, institutions were the Center of International Research that was founded during the First World War. At the beginning, unfortunately, not contain Germans, but contains other countries or other countries. And this was the Center of International Research, was the the starting point of other different centers in Europe. For example, the CNR in Italy was founded as interface with the Center International Research. The same way we had the academic unions. So already before the war, the Second War, there was a starting of some kind of international institutions that were very important in order to have a place where different scientists could meet and discuss. I think that it was extremely important in European perspective, the foundation of CERN that happened in 1954. CERN is the laboratory of Geneva. The laboratory of Geneva contained many, was founded by 12 countries. And these 12 countries, it was the first European, I would say, pan-European institution, because it was not limited by the real Europe that was the 6 original countries, but it contains many other countries, and it was a place where people started to meet. And this was a very, these scientific relations were extremely important in order to have to the beginning of science. Now, science is clearly fundamental for our countries and fundamental for Europe in these days. I think that we face from a difficult, a very difficult on the long run problems, that we have a lot of crises, apart of the political crisis that we have nowadays, but we had also the crisis due to COVID. We have all crises that are connected to global warming, to the fact that the resources on the planet are limited, and also, of course, all type of crisis due to very heavy pollutions. So it's something that we have to deal with. And the thing that is needed, the thing that is badly needed to solve this type of problem is science. Because it's clearly that we have seen with COVID. COVID, killed 7-10 millions of people, or maybe more, but it was not the disaster that could have been without vaccines. Vaccines have been fundamental to stop COVID, and now we start to have also very efficient drugs that are going to cure COVID. So we see that the development of science was fundamental. If COVID arrived 10 or 20 years ago, that would have been a full disaster, for much better, much worse than what happened now. And now, in order to also for climate changing, it's clear that we need energy conversion. Energy conversion, we have production energy, but we see that energy cannot be done in the long run with using not renewable sources. We see all the problem, all the strain that are on the political level by the fact that we have to use a lot amount of gas coming from outside, that we have to use a lot amount of oil, that we have to use, we should also stop coal that we are consuming too much. And it's clear that we can reach all this type of goal, independence from gas, independence from carbon, independence from oil, only if we push science. Because, and also science is needed in order to do this, reach this goal in a way that do not create pollution, in a way that they use renewable resources, because it's clearly that the present days solar panel are wonderful, but in 20 years from now or 30 years from now, we will have the problem of dispose of them and they are constructed by something that cannot be easily disposed of. And therefore, we needed to have, for example, a solar panel that are done by organic material, that we have a different way to save energy, and so on and so on. Therefore, science in the future is what we need. And we need the science that is done in Europe, because we do not want to be dependent too much from other countries, from other institutions, because it's important for us that we have control on the science that is done. And this is, we have seen that this has been crucial, for example, in COVID. During COVID time, it was possible to do many of the, especially at the beginning, there was, when the COVID started, many of the analyses that were based on RNA were done in research lab. So countries that had a research lab to do this type of analysis were lucky. Countries that do not have a research lab could not do the analysis. So it's important for a country to have the research done in their own countries. And it's clearly that this is what's very clear to the European Union. Indeed, it was a long time ago that was said that for the 2 years ago, for the year 2020, there was an idea of constructing a modern European space of research, and this European search of research, it was supposed that all countries had a local budget of 3%. And that is something that is not reached. And this is really a pity, because scientific development is some kind of motor of innovation. And being a motor innovation is clearly the countries that stay at low level investment stay behind countries that go much faster forward, and the difference in investment and research is something that is increasing the disparities, the difference between different countries of Europe. And one of the things that we need to battle from Europe is to try to decrease the difference between countries. Of course, we had a very important role of European Commission. All the different programs of European Commission have been crucial, especially for countries like Italy, where the level of spending was not very high, in order to have to do some progress to bring the research in Italy to the level of European research. But of course, the point, and also what we had the extraordinary experience of the European Research Council. The European Research Council has been fundamental, because it was something that clearly put the accent on pure science, and it stressed the point that pure science is the basis of applied science, that we have in the end also to advance on applied science, but we cannot advance on applied science without pure science, and application of pure science cannot be seen in advance. And therefore, pure science has to be curiosity-driven, and it is important that our society invest in curiosity-driven research. And the European Research Council has been crucial in stating these things, and also helping very much all different countries to move into this direction, not only for giving the grants to individuals. I was extremely happy that I get twice an advance grant from the European Research Council, and that helped very much my research. But also it is been important like a model. Indeed, that's in these days, Italy is going to have some local grants that are mirrored like the European research grants restricted to Italian. So it's kind of model that maybe go on in different countries. But of course, the problem, and one problem is that as far as European Union may help us, may help science, we have the problem that we have, in some sense, Europe is, there is a principle of subsidiarity. The principle of subsidiarity is that Europe may help what the different countries do, what they cannot do by themselves, but the point is that the countries should really do their own job. And now reaching the 3% of spending on research and development is something that, for example, countries like Italy is very far from. And not only Italy, many other countries stay in this direction. We have countries that are 3%, more than 3% also, but other countries are very far. And that how we have the problem of how to change this situation, and that should be done in each of the countries. Therefore, each of the countries have to take their own responsibility in going to change this. Of course, there could be some kind of help from European Union. For example, long time ago, I think 22 years ago, maybe or 24 years ago, the laws that was at that time the head of the European Commission proposed that in the accountability, when counting the total amount, they made the count of the deficit of each country, the investment of research and development should not be counted in the deficit. Of course, it's clearly this will be an extremely important thing, because it's clear that the behavior of a country like Italy, if they knew that investment in university, investment in research, investment in development would not count the deficit, it's clearly that this would have done to the different countries, like Italy, the possibility of investing a lot amount of money or resources in research and development, because they knew that these resources would have a counter-cyclical effect from one side, and they would not be counted in the deficit, and therefore there would be no problem with the European Commission in deficit. Therefore, the problem, okay, unfortunately, the law's suggestion was not accepted at the time have been going on, but it's something that I think that we should try to go once again, because it's crucial that we should reach a minimum investment in all countries on research and development. And now it's clear that this level of interaction between scientists and local government, local academies play a crucial role. Local academies play a crucial role because they can act on the public opinion. They can discuss with the government. They can push the government in what hopefully the right direction. And therefore, this is very important, because it's important that there is a continuous interaction between scientists, science, and the government. And because the point is, in generally speaking, science is something that tries to make the most precise and most honest prediction, evaluation of what is going on, prediction on the future. And these are done in an honest way. In honest way means that the scientists, when do their job, they look in all kinds of possibilities, try to understand all effects, Try to estimate also the errors they're doing, how they are confident on the final prediction they're doing, on the final analysis that they're doing. The fact that science is trying to assess the confidence of the statement is something that is not common in any other type of an endeavor. So this is something that is very important. Therefore, it's very important that the government, not only the European level, we have some mechanism, civic advice mechanism, but something of this type should be developed in each of the countries, and this should be extremely important in order to have Europe move in the right direction. And of course, this is, when I speak in science, well, it's something that it's something that we are in an Accademia dei Lincei, which is divided by two classes, two categories. The category of humanistic science, social scientists, to which the president belongs, and also our foreign affairs secretary, and the sciences that are natural, mathematics and biological science, physical sciences. But from our point of view, of our academy, these two kinds of science go together. And therefore, when I was speaking of science, I did not mean only hard science, but I meant also what you can call soft science, social science, humanistic science, philosophy, and so on. And this is very important that we have. Also, we deal with the government when we deal with presenting ourselves, presenting the science, that we have to stress not only the utility of science. Science is clearly that is fundamental for doing object from the industry. All modern industry moved from the revolution, from industrial revolution, so on. That was based on science. And science is fundamental because also for our days technological development is more fundamental, because not only gives to the industry the resources that they can use to develop the language, the metaphor, the conceptual framework, but it gives also as a way in which a new kind of device, a new kind of object may be developed. You may think the HTML language that is nowadays used on the web was started to be used in a scientific framework in CERN in order to transmit the data to the United States. The first consumer of CDC. Now you see that all objects that we have in photographic machine, a cellular phone, and so on, mobile phone, and so on, they contain CDC, which makes electronic camera. But this the first consumer of electronic camera has been the astronomer, because the whole development of electronic camera was first pushed by astronomers that were ready to spend extraordinary amount of money to build one camera that could be used to make a picture of the universe, and after on went to other people, common people that were not using to able to spend an extraordinary amount of money, but just because it was other people paid the first camera, the price were much lower. So this is clearly that all of the industrial development depend on science, but we have to also to remember that the science is interesting for culture, that there is a unity of culture to which science belongs. And let me recall what I consider very nice quotes from Robert Wilson. Robert Wilson was one of the main, very important American scientists that was a trade union between the scientists and the scientists, especially for high energy science, and the American government. And at that moment, an American senator asked what would be the application of the construction of an accelerator, the accelerator that was later on constructed at Fermi Lab near Chicago. And the senator wanted to know if the accelerator was useful to promote economy or if it was used to military use. And Bob Wilson said the value of the accelerator was in the lab for culture. And like picture, like sculpture, like poetry, and all other activity in which the Americans are happy about, it was not useful to defend the country, but it was fundamental in order that it would be worthwhile to defend the country. Now it's clear that we have to do. This is very important. We have not to forget also the cultural value of science. And I think that the academies, like our academies, are fundamental in transmitting this message that should arrive to the general population. Also, it's clear that we stay in a very, as remarked by all previous people that spoke before me, we stay in a tragic times. We stay in a tragic times because we have an incredible amount of people that are dead, destruction of countries, destruction of wonderful cities, and a huge number, an incredible number of people that have to move from their own city, from their own home, and it's a full, and it's real a tragedy. And it's clear that the academies have to react to this tragedy, and also, for example, academy has been decided of two things. First of all, to give a prize for humanitarian enterprise, which should be done to help Ukraine, and also to give, I think, 10 fellowship to Ukrainian scientists to come to Europe, to come to Italy. And this is something that clearly we badly need to help our Ukrainians that are under attack. However, we have to recall that, generally speaking, in a long run viewpoint, science has been long run perspective. Science has been extremely important against the crisis. Let me recall, just give me two examples. One historical, but also present this day, is the Pugwash Conference on Science World Affair. Pugwash Conference was founded by Russell, was just founded after the Russell-Einstein Manifesto, but was founded just the year after when Einstein was already dead, and played a useful role in opening communication channels during the time that otherwise would be extremely difficult. Pugwash was formed by scientists, but was inviting the people that were not scientists to have a close discussions, like the Maldi conference that we organize here, and that one that will be here in 1 week from now. And they did the background work, for example, for establishing the treaties, for the partial test ban, the non-proliferation treaty, the anti-ballistic missile treaty, the biological weapon convention, and the comprehensive test ban. And according to many people, among them the former Secretary of Defense of the United States, Robert McNamara, credited Pugwash as a very important back channel for the background of negotiation that could end also, for example, the Vietnam War. And this influence, this organization, important influence on the position, for example, Gorbachev, that admitted that some of his idea on peace, on agreement, were coming from Pugos. So this is an effective important of diplomacy and science, of diplomacy that is done not by diplomatic, but by science. And for example, we in Accademia Lincei, we are very keen to this idea of science and diplomacy because we have all conference, a serious conference nearly every month on science and diplomacy. Another important experiment, not experiment, but something that is useful in order to build peace is something that is not very known, but it's the Sessão project. Sessão is synchrotron light for experimental science application in the Middle East. Now that this is done, the funding countries are incredible because in Bahrain, Cyprus, Egypt, Iran, Israel, Pakistan, Palestinian Authority, and Turkey. Now you realize that to have a people, all different countries that sit together sit in a meeting to discuss the way that this synchrotron should have going on is something that is very important. And also very important because it can be useful to establish a person-to-person relation that is extremely important in order to see the opposite in some way as a human, and that is very important. So it's clear that to have scientific relations between for example, Israeli scientists and Iranian scientists and Palestinian scientists is something that is very important. It's in the long run, because it's going to give the ties to have to construct peace. And therefore, I think that we are in a unfortunate way that atmosphere that we have nowadays, the things that happens, and not only the atmosphere, it looks like a Cold War. It reminds me very much of Cold War. It was a long, long time ago that there was not even the people speaking of the possibility of using nuclear bomb and so on. And it's clearly that in spite of these difficulties, I think that we have to be aware how we or maybe our fathers behaved during the Cold War, and that we should not weaken the links between Russian scientists, because it's clear that all links that are between scientists is a communication channel, and communication channels are crucial in order to construct the peace. I think just to give me an example, think of the invasion of Hungary in 1956. It's clear that was an immense tragedy. And suppose that the European scientists in 1956 would decide to break all ties with the country of Soviet Union and of the Warsaw Pact. It's clear that would be, in the long run, would have been a disaster. So it's clear that the fact that we have that our father continued, in spite of Hungary invasion, in spite of Czechoslovakia invasion, in spite of Vietnam War, all this type of activities, to bring links, to keep on living links with Soviet, with the Warsaw Pact, with the other side of the curtain, it's clear that this was crucial in order to reach the peace, to reach something that was more similar to the peace 20 years later, and to have the decrease of nuclear bombs, all the type of acts that was, all type of treaty that were fundamental in order to avoid the nuclear war. So I think that we have to proceed on two different channels. One channel help the Ukrainian scientists, help in Ukraine for all the terrible suffering that happened there, and also keep on the links with the Russian science, because it is important that we have links, because these links among scientists may be an extremely good channel in the long run to construct peace. You don't have to ask if they are important in 10 days from now. They're clearly not important for the next 10 days or for less months. But if you think of the long run of decades, it's clear that these kind of links are crucial and you should not cut them.
Jean-Pierre, il faut que vous... Jean-Pierre, please turn on your micro. Jean-Pierre?
Phone is blocked by you.
Okay. That's fine now.
Very good. Now I can speak. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Giorgio, for your insight and looking at the problem in a broad way, including the cultural dimension, which I think is very, very important. Of course, science is providing a lot of technical knowledge. Another dimension, of course, is training a generation of competent people. But of course, at the same time, it's very important that we manage to convince the next generation that there is room for them and that they can really contribute through their new knowledge, through their new approach to problems. So now I will give the floor, since Elvira couldn't be with us for obvious reasons, to Luis Oliveira e Silva, who will make his own comments on this topic of the future of science in Europe and the role of learned societies. So, Professor Oliveira e Silva, please.
Please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much for the opportunity. Let me thank in particular the presidents of the Accademia Nazionale dei Lincei and the president of the Lisbon Academy of Sciences, and of course, all the academicians and ladies and gentlemen attending this session. So it's a great honor to comment on the profound reflections that were presented just now by Professor Parisi on the timely topic of this session. I will highlight a few points and expand on additional arguments to also support a little bit my vision on the important role of learned societies in the 21st century. We all agree that the vision established by the founders of the academies, framed by the times in which our institutions blossomed, is still important and relevant. The motto of the Accademia Nazionale dei Lincei states, "Take care of small things if you want to obtain the greatest results." The motto of the Academy of Science of Lisbon is, "Unless what we do is useful, our fame is vain." And these mottos really condensate and stand for values and principles that are important still today for contemporary societies. But it's also clear that we live in far different and more complex times than the age of enlightenment, when the scientific academies first developed. Many authors have highlighted this tension and the key challenge posed to scientific societies in the 21st century. And the challenge is how to find the balance between respecting and staying true to the founding principles, and at the same time remain relevant and contribute in a rapidly changing, fast-paced and uncertain landscape. Or what is the balance between a brilliant past and an impactful future? I think this is something that the academies must reflect on. Most learned societies were founded, as Professor Parisi just highlighted, as for scientific exchange, to provide opportunities for the members to network and to hold and to promote scientific meetings. The context is now very different. Other institutions, such as universities, research centers, and even large corporations have assumed a prominent and leading role as the central hubs for the production and dissemination of knowledge. These organizations are also prone to external pressures from various stakeholders. In my view, the academies have an important contribution to society because they are different. They are or should be independent of government, research councils, universities, research units, or corporations. Their members just represent science and humanities and represent themselves. Their agenda is relatively unconstrained, determined by the members. The academies can design and target their activities for timeliness, maximum effectiveness, and societal relevance. And I think this is critically important. And I think this contribution is more important than ever. It is ironic that the 21st century, that has experienced so many benefits of scientific progress, as Professor Parisi highlighted, is also the century that is witnessing the emergence of a culture of anti-science, of fanaticism, or unbalanced logic. The rapidly evolving geopolitical order is also raising additional complex dilemmas. Firstly, on the scientific community as a whole, science does not know borders. This is how European science was brought up. This is how science is done. Science is a bridge, not a wall. However, today, the international landscape is already isolating scientific institutions and people, much in the same way as right after the First World War. As Professor Parisi mentioned, right after the First World War, the International Research Council was founded in 1919. And right after that, it was decided to exclude German and Austrian scientists from its own commissions, meetings, and projects. In 1926, through the influence of Great Britain and the United States, the Council was persuaded to open the doors to the German scientists. But by then, the bridges were not there anymore. The German scientists did not accept the invitation. Germany became even more nationalist and isolated, eventually leading to the Second World War. Secondly, the science and technology in warfare and in conflicts between countries is obvious and more pervasive every day. This goes well beyond nuclear or conventional weapons, touching even many aspects of our daily lives through social manipulation, disinformation, and cyber attacks. This is all based in science and technology that has been developed, of course, with no purpose to have the impact that now has in our daily lives. Ethical dilemmas are present everywhere and have an impact in almost any scientific domain. These questions go well beyond a specific research theme and require independent thinking and multidisciplinary approaches. In this landscape, I would like to argue that academies can play an important and renewed role in two important directions. First of all, it is unlikely that universities or research institutions will be less demanding on the scientists towards addressing their specific institutional goals, and this includes teaching, publishing, attracting research funds. Many times, the institutional incentives on these institutions are not aligned with the engagement of scientists with society on policy making. So the learned societies can thus serve as instruments to provide the support, even executive support, to the members of the scientific community to engage in these activities, to contribute to define priorities, to identify and promote the most important policy measures for the scientific community. Secondly, the scientific know-how underpinning many relevant questions for decision makers is at the same time so specific and covering so many different topics that think tanks or public institutions by themselves do not hold the expertise to support decisions in many areas of public policy. So learned societies can serve as the attraction point for scientists and academics to contribute to the prospective studies critical for decision-making in problems with strongly societal and multidisciplinary components. Academies can bring their reputation, credibility, independence through evidence and science-based process to support some of the difficult decisions that public institutions and the governments face today. However, these two directions that I just mentioned, scientific community support and decision-maker support, pose additional challenges to our learned societies. The first challenge is associated with the sustainability of the academies themselves. For the scientists and academics to engage meaningfully in policy studies, significant administrative and executive support is necessary. This might represent a further strain to societies that hold a vast heritage to preserve, but limited resources and budgetary constraints. The second challenge is associated with talent, guaranteeing that the most outstanding scientists across all disciplines are involved with or connected to the academies, not necessarily as members. In a fast-paced society with novel emerging multidisciplinary fields such as artificial intelligence, energy, or climate change, It is thus critical that academies evolve in a permanent self-renewal, increasing their visibility across all society, involving early career researchers, and inviting a younger and more diverse group of outstanding scientists to collaborate with the learned societies. The overarching question for the learned societies in the 21st century is then, what is the best organizational model to achieve these two goals: sustainability and attraction of the outstanding talent of the scientific community. This enhanced visibility of learned societies can also represent a unique opportunity to foster what different authors have called civic science, defined as the broad public engagement with issues that arise at the many intersections of science and society. Scientists are a part of this dialogue, and it's fundamental to support those who engage with diverse audiences, including members of the public and decision makers. This renewed ambition is of fundamental importance to propagate the values of science, to disseminate the founding principles of our academies, and to speak for Europe's and for our country's research and innovation ecosystem across the full range of the natural, engineering, medical, and social science and humanities, from curiosity-driven research to applied and mission-oriented research, as Professor Parisi highlighted. So the academies are and must be perceived as the prime defenders and promoters of science, not only their technical and societal consequences, but as a cultural endeavor, lending their reputation to promote our core values across all society, to the general public, to the public institutions, and to the government. And I would like to close this brief comment, much in the same way as a recent article in Physics World on the learned societies in the 21st century, with a quote from Abraham Lincoln, the founding father of the National Academies in the US, that further reinforces the vision that Professor Parisi shared here today. In a very famous address to the US Congress, Abraham Lincoln stated, "The dogmas of the quiet past are inadequate to the stormy present. The occasion is piled high with difficulty, and we must rise with the occasion. As our case is new, we must think anew and act anew." So thank you very much for your time and for your attention.
Thank you very much for Professor Oliveira e Silva for your very thoughtful comments. And indeed, I think what you presented as two priorities are extremely important. If you allow me to just develop one more step at European level, which is one thing which I really appreciated very much in my interaction with Commissioner Carlos Moedas, was his determination in developing at European level what he called the science advisory mechanism, which was really to provide the scientific advice at the level of the European Commission, and in particular to mobilize the academies for that. As you know, academies organize themselves in a structure called SAPEA to really provide this advice. So I think definitely we have to make sure that this process is working well, that indeed a broad group of academies or people, scientists that are called by the academies are involved, because I think it's extremely important at the political level that the advice of scientists is made available, although, as we know, the final decision is in the hands of politicians. But this is, in a sense, what we want with democracies. So I think that we should not be replacing the politicians, but we have to put them in a condition where they can really access and also understand, which means that we have to take the time to make the basis of our advice really understandable to politicians. Thank you very much for this. By the way, so of course, as you know, Elvira is not with us, and for very understandable reasons. But José Luis Cardoso forwarded to me a message he received from Professor Rivela Mendes. So maybe I can read the message that he sent, because I think it's an interesting, it's very relevant for the discussion we have. And since we have some more minutes, since Elvira is not with us, I will just be reading the message that he sent to the president of the Portuguese Academy of Sciences. So here is the statement by Professor Riuviela Mendes. Intellectuals, scientists, and artists are currently used by the ruling powers to spread throughout the world their power and influence. This is what is called scientific diplomacy or cultural diplomacy. It's a nice name that surely comforts the soul of the intellectuals. I'm a diplomat, a beacon of my country. On the other hand, internally, the same intellectuals have no or extremely limited impact on the policies of their own country, and also suffer the consequences of political decisions that are against their best judgment. The current situation in Russia is a good example. The magazine The Scientist reports on a series of discreet interviews, with omitted names, of course, that they did with Russian scientists. As a rule, they are aware of the situation well beyond the official news propaganda and strongly oppose the invasion of what most of them say is a brother country. In the first days of the invasion, a strong letter of condemnation was signed by many scientists, but the proponents of the letter had to hold it because of the law passed by the parliament that anyone could be jailed for up to 15 years for saying anything other than the government narrative. Others are in jail or had to pay fines for participating in public protest. And now that the rectors of some universities signed a letter of support to Putin's policies, all scientific contacts with Russia were broken. Many of the scientists interviewed stated that they wished to immigrate, but on the other hand, no working visas were being given to Russians now. In conclusion, I'm still quoting Professor Riuviela Mendes, if intellectuals, scientists, and artists are the strengths, the real strengths of their countries, if they are the ones that foster the development, if they are the showcase that the ruling powers wants to exhibit abroad, then it is also time for them to have a decisive saying on the policies of their country. Do you want to, Giorgio or Professor, excuse me, Oliveira Silva, do you want to comment on that? Or maybe the presidents or the secretaries or other members want to comment on this statement by Professor Riuviela Mendes?
Maybe I could just would like to add that we as Academy have, as Professor Parisi said, tried to do our best to grant Ukrainian scientists support. But from the kind of discussion we had just now, I think we should be concerned to help the Russian scientists as well. And we have to find ways to reach them and to support them that are not as easy as we could do with the Ukrainians. So perhaps one level of discussion that we could open up at one point is how the learned society can be of any help to the Russian community, meaning the Russian scientist community. It's not as you just read. This is not. I might just add that the society to which Professor Luis Cardoso and myself belong, European Society for the History of Economic Thought, has just elected a Russian president from the Russian Academy of Science, and we were very proud that he was able to sign a condemnation of the invasion, but we are very concerned that this might have some consequences for him. And I think that this might happen to other colleagues in other societies, in other situations. So I think that we should give some thoughts at one point how we can help and support the science community in Russia.
Thank you very much for this very appropriate comment. And indeed, if I can add one sentence on this, as a mathematician, I'm in contact with the Russian colleagues and even some colleagues who are presently visiting France, actually visiting IHS, who cannot come back to Russia at the moment for practical reasons, but also because they are known to be definitely not in line with the position of the Russian government. and actually arriving in the country, they could be in a real trouble. And so I think we have to give some thought to that, in particular because our own countries may, from that point of view, not be open to the idea of extending visas, for example, which is one thing I'm struggling for one specific scientist, Russian scientist, whose visa expires at the end of April. And for him to be able to stay, although we found some support for him, but he needs to get a visa. And so this is part of the discussion that is indeed the priority is with Ukrainian scientists, but you should be very careful that neglecting the issue of Russian scientists could actually be extremely damaging for longer term. Are there more comments? Giorgio, you want to add something, or Professor?
No, I fully agree on what people said, and I think that is the point of view. The point is that we have those people that were opponent to the Russian invasion, but they are Russians. They should be supported. I remember that was a long time ago. But there was all the same problem with Sakharov, with all other people that were opponents to the regime in Soviet Union, and there was a strong mobilization for these people. So what is important is that we have a lot of channel, international channel, and I think that we should try to have a control that, for example, none of the huge list of people, of scientists that have signed, I don't know, this kind of manifesto against the Russian invasion. I think in the first days of the invasion, that was, I think, a few thousand, should not have any kind of consequences, and they cannot have. And one way to guarantee that these people that Russians against the war do not have any consequences, to have a spotlight on them, the international spotlight, in order that we know what is happening to them. And that is clear that in some way it will be very important if we establish some kind of communication channel to be sure that all these people do not have a consequence of the very courageous act they have done against the war.
Thank you. Professor Oliveira e Silva, you have a comment, or?
Yeah, I think this is definitely a critical point. The sanctions represent they also represent an emotional response of the governments and the institutions, but we need to think on a medium to long term and really assess what are the consequences of isolating the scientific and the scientific institutions and the scientists themselves. Many of us, of course, know Russian scientists that are either there or that are in Europe, that don't agree with what's happening, and I think we need to bring these people to our vision of what is an open society. So rebuild bridges, not making walls go up. I think this is very important if you look on the medium to long term. So definitely there are short-term measures that can be taken in terms of fellowships or opportunities for Russian scientists working on the visa problem, but on the medium to long term, this is definitely going to damage many of the connections that the societies, the institutions, and the personal links that's within our communities, and this is I think this is very damaging on the medium to long term for Europe and for science in general.
Thank you very much. President Antonelli, you have something to add? Or?
No, thank you. I agree with the words of Giorgio Parisi and Maria Cristina Marcuccio and Professor Silva.
Thank you.
Yes, and so do I. And so do I, Jean-Pierre. I totally agree with what has just been said. And apart from our involvement in signing manifestos and declarations and statements against the war and the invasion, of course, this idea, basic idea of keeping bridges open in order to welcome not only Ukrainian scientists, but also those that in Russia are against the decision of their government, I think that is very important that our societies can have make a point there and help to rebuild science cooperation between the countries that at the moment cannot engage in the ways that we were used to. But I've seen in the audience, Jean-Pierre, the idea was to ask people, to our colleagues, to
absolutely. That was what I was about to do when we reach 16:15, which is 15:15 for your time. But I don't see any question in the.
Yes, I've seen that José Rodrigues, José Francisco. I've seen your hand, maybe. José Francisco.
I don't see it. But
no, sorry. Manuel Porto asked for.
Okay, very good. Please.
Manuel Porto.
Can I put the question now?
Yes.
Please.
Okay, now it was a very interesting session. I am very, very happy with this session. And I have two questions. Well, one of them, I'm from law and economics, not from your areas, but being here with the scientists from Italy, from France, and from Portugal, and the title of this roundtable is "The Future of Science in Europe." You are optimistic or not? Because you speak, of course, about Russia, but you have a challenge nowadays with globalization from China, from India. People don't speak so much about India, from the States, of course, always. And so, do you think, because this is the question, the main question, but the reflection I always make, today I make it again, in the case of Europe, of the European Union, so not including UK, in this case, it is interesting because Europe, the European Union, is by far the biggest surplus of the world, much higher than the Chinese surplus. And you have higher wages, social model, political freedom, and so on and so on. What is the true reason why? And if I can speak, there is a Nobel Prize with us, but in fact, if you look at the number of Nobel Prizes in the world, most of them are from the States and from UK, and not from Italy or Germany, and so on and so on. So there should be some relationship between the Nobel Prizes and, of course, with the surplus of competitiveness all over the world, making cars, so pharmaceutical products, and so on and so on. So Europe is a same case because we have not so much so people graduated with Nobel Prizes as a professor in this case, so Giorgio Parisi, and you can compete. Why? And the other question I put is about the ranking of the universities. If you look at the ranking of universities, the best of the world are not from Italy or from France or from Portugal or from Germany. Are most of them 60 or 70%. One of them, the one where I've studied, I'm proud about that. I studied in Oxford for some years. One of my degrees is from Oxford. But I mean, most of in the ranking of Shanghai and the others are from the States and from UK. And if you look at statistics, and it is my field, the states with the biggest number of Nobel Prizes and highest number of universities in the ranking has the biggest deficit of the world. And UK, with also Oxford and Cambridge, where I thought have been and so on and so on, has the highest deficit of the Europe, not of the European, because they left, but by far $100,000 million of deficit. So what explains, so the two questions, so beginning by second one, what can explain the success up to now of the European Union, of the countries of the European Union, first question, and the second, you are optimistic in the future with countries like, so I have one daughter living in China and I have most of my family from my wife is from India. So you are not afraid of China and of India and of course of South Korea, Japan and so on and so on. These are the two questions from somebody from another field, I should say, from law and from economics.
Thank you very much for your question and your challenge. If you allow me maybe to comment, since I was in charge at European level of one program, which is the European Research Council, that Giorgio Parisi said positive things about. Maybe two very important comments from on my side, which is one thing which really I found remarkable, both in the case of the US and the UK, has been their capacity of attract some of the very best talent for a number of years. In the case of ERC, for example, half of the ERC grantees in the UK are not British. They are people who decided to develop their research in the UK. And of course, the UK institutions have been remarkably efficient at attracting them, but also giving them the opportunity to develop in good condition. And a very important condition was, of course, the freedom which was given to them. And we know that for research, having freedom is absolutely critical for the success. So these were my comments. Now, on the context of Asia altogether, maybe one comment, and of course, other people have, I'm sure, other things to say. One thing which I still find absolutely extraordinary is the speed at which China has been moving forward, because of course it was a political decision by the government to put quite a large amount of money in research. But what has been remarkable for me is the statistics. If you look at the articles which are the 1% most cited, the percentage of Chinese articles was 1% in 2000. Now it's 20%. So the transformation is radical, which meant not only more money was put, but the quality has improved drastically. And in my own field, mathematics, at the moment, recently there was an announcement of an important conference in my field, and I could see that 2/3 of the young people who are speakers, and they have been chosen by a completely international panel, are Chinese. Just because for the next generation, a number of young Chinese are absolutely among the very best. So it means that if you do things right, putting money, of course, is decisive, but at the same time, you have to worry about also improving the quality. And I'm not sure whether it's the same in all fields. I know some colleagues from other disciplines also told me that in their disciplines, one of them was metallurgy, for example, China now is probably number one. And again, with the same pattern, that is long-term investment and attracting very good people. I think I've spoken enough. I should give the floor to other people. Giorgio, do you have a comment?
Yes. Let me say that the fact that, for example, in what was the European Union, the UK was so attractive and Italy was not attractive is something, especially in the context of the European Research Council, was strongly noticed by many people in Italy. Because one thing that was impressive, that you know that when people get a grant from European Research Council, they get the grants in a particular country. They can change the grants later on and so on. But what was quite impressive that in Italy, what was happening, that 50% of Italians that were getting a grants from the European Research Council were not using their grants in Italy, but they were using the grants abroad. And therefore, we have practically no people from other countries that were coming in Italy, while for UK, it was just opposite, more or less, that the people that were going to UK was twice the number of people of UK that were winning a grant. And that was the problem, that the local country is the hospitality, if you want. It's something that was stressed also, that in the ERC program, how much would be improved the situation of scientists in Europe, given grant, and the point that is UK and also US is an hospital country for people that are doing research. Not only from, I mean, I don't think that the salary is something that is very important. What I think that is important, the possibility of doing good research, the possibility to have grants for the government, to hire young people to work with, to have the money to spend for constructing a lab. And that is something that you know, people know that if you are good, that if you have if you have success, you are going to get the money. While we know in Italy that we also, if you are good, if you have successful scientists, sometimes you may not get the money that you need to run your lab. And therefore, people tend to go in this country, and I think that this has been fundamental. I mean, there's been an invasion starting from the 30s, from saying all last century of European scientists that were going to the United States, but that was not only because of the war, of Nazism and so on, but there was a place where they can have the resources to do this kind of job. And now it's clear that China is something that will going on, because it's clear the number of Chinese is higher than the number of Europeans and the number of people from the US. So they have a very good tradition. They have also a very good tradition on the importance of being somewhat the importance of culture. The Chinese tradition is clearly, the Chinese society was founded a long time ago on the importance of culture. You remember that the Mandarin, those that were given the higher position in the administration, they were the people that were been most able to write a poem, to write something, to write a letter. So the importance of culture has been always critical in something that was very celebrated in Chinese society. So it's clearly that science is, so they are open to science. And if you have a country which is not so rich as us, but is investing in science, it's clearly that which is much more populous than ours, it's clear that in the long run, they are going to get to the first level.
Thank you. More comments? Jose Luis or other people?
Maybe we can try to say something on the future of this collaboration. Jose Luis, what do you think? We can suggest a few topics that might be useful to pick up in the future collaboration between the two academies. What do you think, Jose Luis?
Yes, sure. I mean,
yeah, I was thinking that maybe we can say a few words, you, me, and people here, which are the area of possible future collaboration between our academies and potentially, of course, with other academies. And it came to my mind that our two academies are characterized by having both the soft and the hard science. And so perhaps I think that we could say something more of how to interact at the level of non-natural, non-hard science, because as it was mentioned, you know, language can be a barrier in communication. Culture differences may not be leading to the kind of interaction that scientists have when they do their science. So maybe there is an area in which we could think of something to collaborate, having a workshop or something like that in the future, in which we try to address issues that has to do more on the interaction between science, soft and hard science, and particularly communication among different cultures. You know, we are economists, you and myself, I mean, and we know that we speak English all the time, but if you are someone doing literary studies, if you are and so on, then these differences might have some impact in the level of communication. So I was wondering if this may be an area of interest to collaborate, given that you have both the natural and the non-natural science.
Yes, I agree with you, Christina, that the structure of our academies is in some way makes things easy, because we have the same structure of classes in sciences and humanities, and especially because I believe that what is important is in this case that people of members of our academies who have already contacts, intellectual and scientific for scientific purposes, that they should keep an ongoing and develop ideas for future projects in the areas of research in which they are involved and engaged. As you said, in our case, we are working together in topics related to the history of economics, history of economic thought, and I'm sure that it will be easy to organize something, for instance, just to give you an idea, related to the role and to the cooperation between our academies or people belonging to our academies that were relevant in other times and in the past, building bridges and building process of cooperation, which were, in the case at least of the Lisbon Academy of Sciences, were quite relevant and important. But I am aware of the fact that there is a strong heritage of Italian studies in Portugal, especially in the arts and humanities. And in the past, many of our members of our academy have had in the past, I remember, maybe the name is familiar to some of the members of Lincei, Pina Martins. Pina Martins was a president of our academy, and he, not only because he was married to an Italian, but he developed a lot of activities with also with Accademia dei Lincei, I believe, but especially in the diffusion and the spread of Italian culture in Portugal during many years, and he was a promoter of this relationship. So I believe that this is not a task for today, and we should keep talking about this possibility. But above all, what I would say is to encourage the members of our academies who know each other and who have already contacts, intellectual and for scientific cooperation, to go ahead and to new lines of cooperation and research. And what I think it would be interesting is to have, for instance, a regular seminar, let's say once a year or twice a year, a seminar in which we could exchange and organize, but not only for the discussion of issues related with policy for science or science for policies, but also issues related to what we really do as researchers, and especially try to engage in cooperation for research activities. As Luis said in the beginning, academies are not at the forefront of research production, of scientific production, and we strongly rely on our universities, our research centers for these purposes. But the academies can be institutions that can make significant approaches to this and try to bridge and make bridges between scientists and people, not only in different scientific areas, but also in different countries. And I strongly believe that in the case of our two academies, there are conditions to go ahead and put forward the new lines of cooperation. But I've seen that there are some colleagues, I would not like to monopolize discussion, sorry, Jean-Pierre, but I've seen that there are at least 3 colleagues who wish to make some comments.
José Francisco.
José Francisco, I see in the now. José Francisco Rodrigues, yes, José?
Yes, very, very briefly, just to say that it was really a pleasure to see in the list of members of the Accademia dei Lincei several mathematicians that I know and I have been collaborated with from Italy. And I think not only in humanities, but also in mathematics, I see the possibility, if there is an encouragement from the two academies to bring these individual contacts and experience to some joint initiatives that could be made in some specific fields. For instance, in mathematics, just to give an example, Alfio Corteroni already gave a lecture, a Pedro Nunes lecture in the academy, but it was not in the framework of this new agreement between the two academies. So I see that in mathematics, it will be possible if the two academies support it.
I see also Jorge Braga de Macedo. Jorge. Jorge Braga de Macedo. Jorge, your phone on, please. Switch your mic.
Hello?
Yes.
Sorry. Yes, thank you. I just wanted to mention the names of two Lincei colleagues with whom I have collaborated. And since you mentioned Pino Martins, I entered the Academy through his hand. He's a constant souvenir of Italy in our Academy. But I'm speaking about Antonio Sgamelliotti, who has signed with me the Paris Declaration on Heritage Science, and we have collaborated with universities here in Portugal. And the other one, you'll be surprised, is an American. He is the son of John Kenneth Galbraith, James Kenneth Galbraith, and he treasures his link to the Lincei. So these are two specific cases, one a scientist and a heritage specialist, and the other one a fellow economist, that I'm sure would reinforce this friendship between Lisbon and Rome. Thank you.
Carlos Geraldo, yes.
Hello. I would also maybe present a possibility. I'm a chemist, specialist in NMR and MRI area with applications in structural biology and in medical imaging. And I have presently strong collaboration with two Italian scientists and members of Italian Academy of Science. One is Silvio Aime from the University of Torino, and the other one is Claudio Lucinat from the University of Florence. I actually contacted them to see if they could attend, but well, they had other things to do. But they are active, very active, depending on their availability. So I could suggest or possibility of having some seminar or some collaboration through the joint meeting one day between the two academies, involving, well, from my side and some other colleagues, and especially in Italy, these groups, so they would be happy to do something together. And actually, even inviting foreign people from Europe, we have organized several, through cost, several European collaborations in cost actions and regular meetings. I have been in the chemistry steering committee of cost for many years. So, and Silvio Aime is both Silvio Aime and Claudio Lucinat are well known in the really top. Okay, thank you.
Very good. If you allow me, I don't know, maybe we are getting close to a conclusion, but if you allow me to just to make one point concerning an initiative for which Portugal is playing a very important role through Ciência Viva, and actually Manuel Heitor has been helping with this, which is a conference that I personally have been pushing to really look at the impact of the pandemic on the career of young researchers. I think we are talking here about the future of science in Europe. And of course, the future of science in Europe is really the next generation of scientists. And so we must make sure that all these, the crises we are going through, of course, pandemic was a big one. Depending on the fields, the impact was more or less important, but in some fields it was very, very significant because people had their experimental work really very seriously delayed, and sometimes more than delayed, actually made impossible. Some other fields less. But also one thing we noticed, and I was in Lisbon just over the weekend for the annual meeting of the Marie Curie Alumni Association, And I could hear and discuss very directly with some members really how they finally decided to quit research and do something else. Of course, they're still benefiting from their exposure to research and the fact that they have been going, they are really had a very advanced scientific training. But in the end, they saw that there was so much uncertainty and so much uneasiness about becoming a scientist that I could see a number of clearly talented people who could have stayed in science who finally decided to go away. So, of course, what is very important is it's a personal decision, which is fully respectable, but we have to make sure that these people still remain our ambassadors. So even if they are not scientists by profession, that they are going through the scientific training and being exposed to scientific community, we have to keep the contact with people who decide after some time to really get to the to another activity. And so the purpose of this conference, which will be held now, we decided on the date on the 7th of June, exploring the impact and the first data we have on the impact of typically the pandemic, but also further to the pandemic, also the new political situation in Europe on the career of young scientists and how we can foster it, how we can analyze it, how we can develop best practices, because clearly from one discipline to the other, one country to the other, the measures taken have been quite different, and for sure there are some lessons to be learned from some institutions who really made very big efforts to accommodate the difficulties that people were facing, because I think it's very, very critical. We cannot afford at European level to lose a generation, and definitely in some fields we are in a situation where this could happen. So I think we have to make sure that we just keep this alive. And so therefore we are working on it. And of course, it will be very open, public. Of course, there will be a number of young people involved in the event. And I was very grateful that Scientia Viva was willing to organize the 4th Mariano Gago conference under this topic. As I told you, it will be 7th of June in Brussels. And we hope, and we are going to work on this, to produce a manifesto exactly focused on the needs for the career prospect for young researchers. And the choice of the date of the 7th of June was not random, because there is a Competitiveness Council, which, as you know, is the meeting of ministers in charge of research at European level on the 10th. So therefore, we hope if people attending the conference agree on supporting this manifesto, which will be, of course, prepared through interaction with a number of institutions, that it can be brought forward to put on the table of the Council of Ministers on the Competitiveness Council on the 10th of June. So I just wanted to call your attention to this effort, which now is going to be materialized. And we hope we really make it work. And I think it's also the responsibilities of academies altogether to make sure that there is a next generation. I'm sure you're convinced of that. So I thought it was appropriate that I bring forward this information, which is still work in progress. We still have to make really things completely finalized, but I think now the basic step was taken yesterday morning, and we have now a clearer view of how we want to do it and when we want to do it and with whom we want to do it. But I think it's very important that we focus on the next generation of scientists. Okay. On my side, I'm willing to stop here, but maybe if you want me to do more, I'm willing.
Yes,
to
I think we can stop, and before passing the microphone or giving the floor to Lincei to close the meeting, let me just thank you, Jean-Pierre, for the moderation of this webinar. Thank you very much, Giorgio Parisi and Luis Oliveira Silva, for your thoughtful presentation and comments and the way how you addressed this audience of the two academies. Thank you to all of you who have participated. And I think, Christina, that the sign has been given for the future. I think that there will be for sure bilateral conversations between members of our academies who have already contacts in different areas and fields in which our academies are organized. And let's hope that in the near future we will be able to call for another seminar or webinar in which we shall have the opportunity for going on in this for sure fruitful cooperation. Thank you very much for this possibility. And now Professor Roberto Antonelli and Cristina Marcuso, I give you the floor for closing the seminar.
So maybe we can imagine also for the future something in humanities, in literature, linguistics, philology. So we speak a language very near. We can understand Portuguese, and maybe you can understand Italian.
Sure. José Luis speaks excellent Italian, by the way.
So when we'll do something in humanities, we can use also our own language. And I think that is a good reason. Also for our French cousins are without UK, we can use Romance language among us.
I would like just to add that we had a webinar. I like very much your idea, José Luis, to have once a year a webinar, the way in which you organize with the Brazilian Academy.
Yes.
We did it that we had the Brazilian talk about their own economy, and then we have Italian commentator and vice versa, in order to be able to have a good interaction. So perhaps if we can decide that we will have one webinar a year just to make a start, in which we focus on the interaction between the two type of culture, the two type of colleague working. And I suggest that since we had science this time, perhaps next time, as Roberto Antonelli suggested, we can try to have a webinar on the other side of our academy, literary and social sciences. So maybe José Luis, in the next few days, we can work out the date and the format, and then we'll propose that to our academy, say for the autumn or next spring or something like that. Is that agreeable to you?
Perfect, Cristina, perfect.
Sure. Now the past president of the Accademia Brasileira is in Italy, in Naples, for the next month, Marco Lucchesi. Maybe we can do something together.
Okay, good. Thank you very much.
Okay. Luis, I see you in a few weeks. Are you coming to Padua, of course?
Yes, sure. I'll come to Padua. Yes.
Okay, yes. So I'll see you in the next few weeks.
Yes. Okay.
Ciao.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.